All right, so one of the things that I did was I went back and changed the color of the line work. I just felt like that brownish gray was not getting me the look that I wanted, and it wasn't feeling crisp. So I came back in and I just used kind of, I think this is probably an 80% gray. And so now we're at the point where I've made all of the changes to the color, although that didn't seem like that changed. And now we have to make sure that everything's lining up. And so you can see that we have a little bit of cleanup here. We will turn that back on and unlock the layer that we need to be on. And so you can see that that goes a little bit too far. This doesn't go far enough. So there's always that when you're drawing on different layers and you're not able to view them. I did actually view this for a little bit. What I did was I turned all of the orange blue while I was drawing so that I could do it semi-transparent. And I was able to see the blue a little bit more. So you can see that I made that curve feel normal. And if we wanted, we can bring this down a little bit lower since it's going back in space, and that would be a normal thing for it to do, you know, in terms of perspective. But there's all these little things. And the reason why I decided to change this color is because this had an outline in it, and I didn't like the way the look was working with that. So there's a little bit of an issue here. I'm going to kind of ignore it just to make things a little bit faster and call his body kind of done. I don't want to kind of bore you guys with details because I could go in and like really invest in a million details. So let's focus on his head. So we're going to turn all these guys off and we're going to turn this off. And we need to start thinking about what's happening here. So we have, we're going to start from the bottom up, and then we'll go in and put the lines back in. This might be a little bit of a long video. All right, so what I want to do is I want to make this be one line, and then I'll turn it into an outline. So I'm going to do bottom of the hill, top of the hill, bottom of the hill for myself, and then I'm going to get that curve going. Once I've done that, I'm actually going to turn this on because I need to know in relationship to that that I'm working off something that is going to be in the final drawing. So that's really important. And then I'm going to come in and just make this, and this is kind of that 80, let's make it the slightly thinner, and then we're going to use our stroke to make that. So we're just going to say, what is a 10 point? Oh, too big. What is a 6 point? It's looking pretty close. Let's turn this guy off and move this out of the way and see. Oh, it's too big. Command Z. So let's go down to 5 point. Let's do 4.5 and call it a day. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and turn this on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Object, down to Path, and I'm going to outline that stroke. Because then I can fix this, and I can also make it a little bit heavier here, and then it's going back in the distance here. So we'll be able to manipulate the perspective that way, and we'll also be able to fix these endpoints. So all we have to do for these endpoints is just tweak it so that it lays right on that line. I'm going to pull this line back a little bit. I'm going to pull this up a little bit because it should be thicker here and get thinner on the outsides because they're going away from us. So you always want to think about perspective. And I'm actually gonna pull that up a little bit more so that we can get a heavier line. And that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna call it a day on that element. I'm gonna turn those guys off and then I'm gonna mess around. Oh man, there's a line right here. I wish I had mimicked that. That's okay. I can do this. I can do a option drag, and then I can delete this point and delete this point and delete this point and delete this point, and then it's just a line. And you can see that it's trying to make a shape out of this. We can fix that by going into, I always forget where they put the scissors. I'm just going to clip it right there, and I'm going to clip it right there, and that becomes its own thing, and we'll drop it down there. And we're going to have these orange things coming off of it. So I'm actually going to leave this stuff up, and I'm also going to make that a 0.7. So we're moving that up a little further than it's showing in the drawing. I'm actually going to go to Object, Path, Outline, Stroke for this too, because you can see that if I don't, I have kind of this awkwardness. Oops, Command Z. This awkwardness that's happening over here that we want to minimize. Hopefully we don't need this line again and have to do all of that again to get it back. And then if we want, we could actually move it up so again we have a little bit of sense of depth. All right, so we're going to make these orange shapes over the top of this or underneath this to make our lives easier, and we'll use that line as the thing that kind of hides things for us. And so we're just going to drop them in real quick, and let's go ahead and turn them orange so that we can see what they're looking like as we're building them. That should do it. All right. And again, our line comes up a little bit further than it actually does, but nobody's going to know this except for us, and we're not telling anybody. Nobody's ever going to miss that line was a little bit further. Now there's a little bit of curve here, so I'm going to go ahead and give that, let that happen. I'm going to actually delete one of these points because it's kind of making that curve a little bit awkward. Fewer points, the better. That's how you win this game in Illustrator. The more points you have, the more difficult it is. I didn't have that one quite down enough. So we're going to come over here and do this side. A little bit of a curve there that I didn't intend, but it's there. So I'm going to actually turn the head on as I'm drawing this so that I can make informed choices. Now I'm going to turn it off. Oops. Let's see if we have any more orange. We do. So again, I'm going to turn that head on, but this time, let's do this. I'm going to give myself that as a semi-transparent object. so that I can see where my lines need to be, because they're always a little bit different. You can see that my head's a little bit further out. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab that, top of the hill, bottom of the hill, top of the hill. I try to make these points in the same place. And the reason why is because it'll make your curve look more uniform if you do that. And then we'll just go in and pull these guys, keeping in mind that it gets smaller that direction. I'm going to move it back in a little bit. I think I'm going to pull this guy in a little bit. There we go. And then we're going to do right on the edge, top of the hill, bottom of the hill, top of the hill, bottom of the hill. And then we're just going to come in and pull those guys. And we will leave those alone. All right, so let's go ahead and give that the gray everybody else is rocking. And let's see where we're at. Oops. We need to come down here and make this not transparent. That's going to give us much more interest. Now you can see that we have some cleanup to do. You know, again, we're building these really quickly and not in relationship to the other. You can see some of these orange elements need to have the right color. So that's this color. Oops, that might be the too dark. Command A. Maybe that. Looks like it's that. All right. So you can see that we have some tweaking here. That always happens. So I'm going to unlock all these guys, and I'm just going to look at it one by one. You know, and you can see that I have a little bit too much space here. So I'm going to unclick that. I'm going to grab that guy and fix that one. And probably it wouldn't be a horrible idea to bring these guys up. So that's looking okay. This guy needs to be that color. Oops. This guy looks a little awkward, so we're definitely going to clean him up. His perspective doesn't look like it matches anything else. So we're going to fix this guy too. Let's just get rid of that guy. Screw that guy. We're going to fix that. Honestly, like I could do this for hours on end, and I don't want to bore you guys with that. So imagine me like cleaning all of that stuff up. The next thing we're going to focus on is the good stuff here, which is his little eyeball. So we're going to turn all of that off. Oops. Lock all that, turn that all off. We're going to give ourselves a new set of things. All right, so we're going to give ourselves a little bit of the black eyeball. And then we're going to do this guy, and we're going to come over him and do some highlights. And those are going to be in other shapes. It'll be easier. The more complicated your shape gets, the more complicated, oops, Command Z. The more complicated your shape gets, the more complicated, you know, your mesh gradient is. So we're going to give ourselves those guys. We're going to turn those off because what I want to focus on is doing kind of the highlights. And so I can see right here. So I'm going to try to do a very pointed highlight here and then do a couple of shapes over the top. I'm not going to do that. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and approach this in the way that I was going to start anyway. Let's go ahead and draw these shapes over that are kind of like lighter colors that kind of lay over. So one of the things that I did in my original drawing is I did actually do some mesh gradient. And I went back because I spent a longer period of time kind of drawing that. So I wanted to kind of go and see what I was doing in there and come back and use it in here. Why are you not letting me? So I'm going to do that mesh gradient right there. Now, remember, I'm going to unclick that. I'm going to go after that black. Remember when we did the duck bill where we held the color. I'm going to come up here to view and go down to outline view. And then I'm going to hold that color on either one of those sides. And then we're going to go back to view and do our preview. And you can see that I have a pretty realistic. And so one of the things then I can do is I can use these colors to kind of create, or these mesh gradients that already exist to kind of do that darker gray. Oops, not dark enough. And we're going to go ahead and kind of give, oops, I need to grab that guy. For some reason he's not washing the way I want him to wash. I'm going to grab that point and let it wash all the way out. I'm going to grab this and let it wash all the way out. I'm going to grab this and let it wash all the way out. And then we're going to draw those shapes over the top that kind of give us that feeling of aperture, kind of like a camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this off, and we're going to do another layer on top of that. One of the things we could do, which is not a bad idea, is we can turn this on. We can make it semi-transparent so we know where the edges are. And I think it should allow it to go semi-transparent. I think the new versions do. All right, so we know where the edges are of that, which is very, very helpful. And then we can come up here and then just kind of start drawing in kind of those darker points that come in. And I'm not going to make this super messy because it's tone on tone, or super clean because it's tone on tone, and nobody's really going to be able to see the small details unless we blow this up quite large. And we're going to make that a black shape. And then we're going to come in and kind of do this gray shape. I'm trying to get this guy done and move on to other drawings. Next week I'll be producing those on Monday, and they'll be viewable for you guys on Wednesday. Well, they'll actually be viewable for you guys on Tuesday. Then maybe we make it that. And so let's go ahead and also do this guy, which is a black, and then there is maybe a little bit of a drop of mesh in the middle. Let's see how we did. Oops, that's probably going to be too expected. But we're going to come back to this. We're going to unlock it. We're going to turn the transparency back up and see if that's giving us kind of enough of an impression of that eye that we're happy. Don't like that this is moving out. And then zoom out and see how we feel. I mean, I feel like it's probably enough. I could, again, mess with this for hours, but that's not the goal here. It's just to get you guys kind of going. Let's take a look before we move on to kind of the finishing touches here, to what's happening here. I think we're going to leave him alone. I just don't think it's worth your time seeing me do that. So kind of the last finishing touches are to bring this gray in and the line work, and we're going to finish that really quickly. And I'll probably turn this video off for a few minutes so that you guys aren't going to have to sit through seeing all of this, and then kind of do my final wrap up. All right, you guys, I brought you back for the big kind of wrap up. One of the things that I did while I was drawing this, and you guys have seen me do this before, which is to make something a little semi-transparent. So I made his cap that so that I could get those elements right. But now we need to go back in and like these little tweaks where I was not quite on my line need to happen. So I'm just going to go in and fix those guys. You know, and this is not my favorite drawing because I have done it a little bit faster and a little bit more rushed than I might have if we had unlimited time. And one of the things that I usually do in class is I usually draw like while, if you guys don't have questions, and then if you choose to watch, you can watch as I draw things. But I mean, I don't think he is, you know, a horrible BB8. And I think he's pretty reasonable. You know, and we can take his background out. Actually, I'm going to make, this is one thing I intended to do. I'm going to make this lighter. And then I'm also, he has a little bit of light coming from the top. So one of the things that happens with mesh gradients is sometimes when you do a mesh gradient, oops, Command Z, my Option and Command keys are not in the same place with this new keyboard, is you lose your outline. So I'm going to do a mesh gradient so he has that light from above. I'm going to pick a little bit lighter and then drop it in. You see that I lost my outline. That's why I duplicated this, so I can drop the color out of it and then drop that outline back into my drawing. And you can see like that made a huge difference in how he functions. I could probably tweak this stuff all day. Like I feel like the center here could go a little bit darker. And then these could go a little darker as well. Again, I could tweak this guy. Oops. all day, but we're not going to. We're going to kind of finish him up and let him go. But to kind of, oops, let's be thoughtful about where I put that layer. To finish him up, I'm going to put him on a darker black or darker blue background. I think he actually looks better in blue. And then I'm actually going to give, I'm going to get rid of that outline. I'm going to come down here and get like a dark, really navy blue. And then on that layer, I'm just going to put a little bit of a shadow behind him. So he looks pretty good. I will say that I felt like this BB8 looked better, but I had a lot of time to mess around with him, and we did a little bit more drop shadow, you can see. So that is the end of BB8. I'm going to start drawing another Star Wars character next week on Monday, and hopefully I will have all of those live for Monday, so those will be the videos that you need to watch for Thursday. Thanks.